Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Cronuts, Part 2. The frying, the eating, and the analyzing. That's right, I don't know about you, but I cannot wait to see how this turns out. So here we go. Previously on Cronuts. We made some cronut dough, it took a few hours. We folded it and turned it 3 times. And when our dough was done, I divided it in half. Half I actually wrapped in plastic and put in the freezer. And the other half we rolled out and cut into donut shapes. And we let that double in size, which took about an hour and 15 minutes. And now we're ready to fry and test this first batch. And to do that, you're going to need some hot oil. I'm using a little mini deep fryer. But if you don't have it, you could certainly just use a pot of oil heated to 350 degrees. And by the way, I'm using grapeseed oil for my frying, although I'm pretty sure any kind of vegetable shortening or oil will work. And once our oil has reached temperature, we're going to carefully, because we don't want to knock the air out, we're going to carefully pick up our cronuts. And we're going to drop those into the oil. I'm going to do 2 at a time. And you know what? I've always felt focusing was a totally overrated video technique. All right, but if you insist, I guess that is better. And we're simply going to fry those for between 1.5 and 2 minutes per side. I guess that would kind of depend on the exact thickness. These were fairly standard donut-sized cronuts. So for me, about 1 minute and 45 seconds per side was absolutely perfect. And you can really see after we flip these how they puff up. You have all that gas that's released by the yeast, kind of trapped in between those layers. And that's really the magic behind this kind of a pastry. And you can kind of see those striations on the side. So at this point, I was pretty excited to tear into one of these, but I couldn't. I had to fry the rest. And once those were all fried and cooled a little bit, it's time to dress them up. Now, I believe these are actually supposed to be tossed with like a cinnamon sugar and then a vanilla custard piped inside. But I'm not making any custard, and I'm not a huge fan of the cinnamon and sugar dusting. So I decided to go with just a very simple icing. And as you well know, all that is powdered sugar with a little splash of milk, a few drops of vanilla. You take your freakishly small metal whisk and you mix it up until smooth. And that's it. That's icing. Oh, and by the way, ignore the method I'm using to get the icing on the cronuts. While sexy, it's not very efficient, and I actually remembered on the second batch how you're supposed to ice them. So stay tuned for that. But I went ahead and finished those up. And at that point, there was nothing left to do but bite into one of these to see, and more importantly hear, how we did. So here we go. Yeah, that just happened. But they were as advertised, an exact hybrid between a crispy, buttery, crunchy croissant and a delicious fried yeast donut. Just incredible. Look at that. By the way, a heads up, the dough is not sweet. We only have a couple tablespoons of sugar in it. So I am relying on the icing here for sweetness. So just a heads up, if you're not going to ice them, do not expect these to be very sweet. Okay, so that batch was finished, and quite successfully, I might add. But we're not done. We're going to take out the other half of the dough that I actually kept in the freezer overnight and then thawed out this morning. So that'll answer the questions, can you make the dough ahead? Yes, you can. Okay, so we saw and heard what happened with just 3 turns. For this half of the dough, my plan was to roll it out into another rectangle, because I'm going to give it one more tri-fold, and then we're going to roll it, and then we're going to cut our cronuts. So we're going to fold that just like we did yesterday, and then we're going to roll it flat. And because the last batch was regular sized, I wanted to do these a little thicker, because the pictures you see of the original cronuts are much higher, which I assumed was not only from the additional layers, but also from cutting them thicker. So I'm only going to get 6 out of this piece, plus assorted extra holes. And yes, because this was a test, I wasn't so worried about the size. I probably could have used a slightly larger cutter for this batch and got 6 slightly bigger ones. But that's fine. It's all part of the learning process. And once I had all those stamped out, we're going to do the exact same drill as yesterday. We're going to let those double in size in a draft-free place. So I placed mine in a cool oven. And in about an hour or so later, they should double in size and look something like that. And you can already see this is significantly taller than the last batch. So as excited as I was for batch 1, I was even more hyped up for batch 2. Oh, I know I seem calm, but I get hyped. And then just as you saw earlier, we're going to carefully grab those without smashing them. We're going to place those into our preheated 350 degree oil for about 1.5 to 2 minutes per side. And as you can see, these really puffed up beautifully. And yes, part of that is that we cut them thicker. But also, don't forget we gave it that extra tri-fold, which tripled the number of layers, which I believe is 162 layers at this point. Although I'm not exactly sure if that's right. I'm paid to look good, not do math. I mean, carry the one. I don't think so. So no surprise he's puffed up way higher. So I continued until that batch was cooked. I put them on the cooling rack. And then I proceeded to ice these, but instead of wasting all that time with a spoon, I just dipped the tops. I mean, that's how you're supposed to do it. And it would have been perfect, except for stupid human nature, which told me, hey, those are perfect just like that, but you know what you should do? Dip them again for no reason. So I did. I tried to double dip, which did accomplish getting more icing on there, but it also didn't make them look as good. So be warned, that's greed for you. Or is it gluttony? Probably a combination of both. But anyway, once those were iced and cooled to room temperature, it was time for taste test number 2. So let's watch and listen. So you definitely still have that crisp exterior and that croissant-like texture, but despite being taller and more traditionally cronut looking, I think I actually preferred the first batch better. I don't know if it's because we had fewer and bigger layers of butter, or just because of the size they fried up crispier, but the first batch seemed more donut-like with the crispy benefits of the croissantness. But for me, the second batch seemed like more of a deep-fried croissant, or it didn't seem as donut-like. And don't get me wrong, both versions were enjoyed very much. So anyway, there you go. My first attempt at Cronuts. And by the way, I know a lot of you people have been emailing me concerned I'm going to get in trouble because Cronut is a registered and protected name by the creator of the Cronut, Dominique Ansel. So I did go with Cronuts, and there's a good chance I will be arrested and spend time in jail, which is fine. I think I would do pretty good in prison. I'm surprisingly thuggish. So anyway, kind of a project, but a very fun project, and something I hope you more adventurous food wishers will try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more information as usual. And as always, enjoy.